So, ladies and gentlemen, my presentation is on regulatory excellence in African genetic biocontrol. I decided to call it this because I thought, I already knew that some of the presenters were going to be better able than me to describe the actual situation on the ground. They are going to be presenting, perhaps in other words, in different words, much of what I would be saying in this one. So I decided to look at it from the other side, excellence in carrying out regulations of our activities when it comes to genetic biocontrol. So, as you can see, all these have been spoken about. Regulation of genetic biocontrol in Africa, we've heard it from the people who are on the ground and running. So I don't want to tell you what genetic biocontrol is, we already have it. But then perhaps in Africa we should say, well, yes, we have concentrated on malaria, perhaps because this is the main problem we have today, and this is precisely what our theme talks about. But we have pest management, we have conservation efforts, which are also doing fairly well. So what my paper brings in essentially is a brief review of what everybody is doing. So I looked at what everybody is doing in open places. I went online so that what I'm presenting is what is actually in the public knowledge. You go to the websites of these institutions, the countries, you simply look for general information about regulating biocontrol in Africa. And what you find is this. There is actually widespread adoption and use in the southern part of Africa. I think this one goes without saying. We already know it from the headlines. Is that true from the journalists? Have we heard about these things, that the southern part of Africa is actually leading when it comes to GMOs, when it comes to all these other technologies which are connected? Now, in Eastern Africa, there is a rising adoption and acceptance of biotechnology. It is rising so fast, and we are embracing it. I think possibly because we realize that it's impossible to move forward without using it. Well, if you have been here for the last 3-4 days, you already know that the future of malaria control is actually in gene drives, isn't it? Am I the only one who is in Jerusalem today? So in the Sahel and West Africa, there is also lots of embracing and adopting. I'm not mentioning the countries specifically because most of us are from those countries. And the fact that we have them here in this room means that there is a lot of progress taking place in those areas regarding this. So the issues which I find are the gaps in the policy, the public awareness, which I believe Amelie has very well articulated, and also stakeholder engagement, which I believe Joseph or somebody, is he still in the room, had actually spoken about. Now, in the policy arena, I think there is a lack of champions in the political space because politicians, I think, I don't want to call them the weakest link. They indeed are not, because as we heard yesterday, the minister in Ghana is actually the champion of these things. But again, just like people in ethics usually say, all politics is local. If you want to talk about anything, remember that the public will put a face to whatever is being said. And the face of the champion will determine what happens based on their past. So if yesterday I was engaged in other things, and today I want to talk about gene drives, you are going to look at gene drives based on what you understand about me in the past. So this is a very human way of doing things. And so it's something that we must be able to work with. Now, we must prioritize funding now because the current funding seems to exclude new technologies. this is not something that just happened. It is because for most of the decades, we have known that new technologies and everything that's being pushed, which is new, is funded by someone else. Now, if, for instance, we had yesterday that 40% of the funding in these areas in Africa comes from just one country, the United States. When it is either MAGA, MAHA, whatever it is, make Africa great again, it means we must it means we must finance it on our own. So this again is not the work of scientists. It is the work of politicians who prioritize funding for public projects, and therefore they are a very important stakeholder. So we heard yesterday that there are issues when it comes to placement of, particularly, it's not just the regulation of biotechnology. I know, because my past has been in research policy. It is the whole of research. Where is it the best to have research in these countries? Of course, health research is specific. Agricultural research is very specific to those sectors of the economy. But when it comes to managing them, sometimes we put them in education ministries, sometimes in the Prime Minister's office. Yes, some countries do have that. And we have not looked at the figures as yet, but I tend to imagine that it is best when research is managed from a coordinating ministry. That means something like Treasury, something like Planning, Office of the Prime Minister, yes, Office of the President. But these are political issues which, again, have to be decided by the right people who are better placed. So stakeholder engagement needs to be effective between all the stakeholders. I'm not going to define them. We have been told by the last presenter that it's not yet defined. It's a bit difficult, although we know in general who they are. But we would also like to determine that information needs to flow in all directions. Another thing, let's look at the next one and leave this one alone. There is need for enhanced public awareness. This is true because it's also linked to the first one. We need here to get everybody to come along with us. Public awareness is also a little bit difficult to understand. Sometimes I tend to think that we also need public awareness among the elite. The elite here are the policymakers and more specifically the scientists. Because Charles is here with his Western education. He understands what goes on in the villages. But because the Western education makes him think in a particular way, he tends to move and gloss over certain facts which he may know, but then they do not become important as he moves with his decisions. So much so that we still need to remind ourselves all the time that we are serving the public out there, which is people, and they have their own ways of doing things. And we need to respect it. We need to work with them all the time. So information exchange between scientists and communities and policymakers should be in all the ways possible, in all the directions. Capacity issues. Regulatory capacity, to me today, is fairly well advanced. We have our own citizens running these institutions. They know what they ought to do. They are able to speak to their policymakers. But in order to move, we still need to engage more so that it becomes a working system for everybody. Research and innovation capacity, it's also developing. At least we must mention today that Many of the people we have been dealing with have got master's degrees, have got PhDs, have done postdocs all over the world. They have come back to work in Africa, and they know everything. And then, of course, public acceptance is also quite important here. So, in order to regulate well, you need proper safety protocols, you need clarity in your communication, you need to deal with importation and trade facilitation. This is a very political issue. You need to promote inter-Africa trade and innovation by making the other two work for you. And I'm putting here the Cartagena Protocol because that is the basis. We are all part of it. When these meetings are held, we go there. It is upon us to make our voice heard in those discussions as these protocols and other international instruments are being developed, so that whoever goes to those meetings has to be capable of articulating the issues. I really want to save you time, so 5 minutes if you may. So what we need is strong linkages with the grassroots to address the negative perceptions which may arise. We need to promote regional cooperation. We need pragmatic approaches to local commerce and cross-border engagements, and presence in multilateral discussions where international instruments are developed. I have already said this. So let me thank you if I have saved you any time, and hope that this one has been able to open your eyes in some of the issues that we, at least to link the other papers that have been presented earlier. Thank you, Charles.